But no, it's super duper cool. I'm really excited for it. I'm tool alongside all the other stuff that's come out. But I'm gonna go ahead and get us rolling and introduce you. Guys, this is Ask a Noco Pro if you're joining us live or recorded. I always post these up on YouTube, so if you're watching, that's probably where you're at, hopefully. With that, Kaleb is joining us today. He is with Rural First, as you can see. He does land loans and he has some other products as well. We are going to be doing our regular Q&A style kind of back and forth, asking Kaleb some questions so that we can better understand land loans from the perspective of real estate agents. If you're watching this as a buyer's agent or a listing agent, hopefully this will give you a better understanding of at least one of the options out there. And then also if you're a lender or a buyer watching this, I think this is really good inside information as well, so that you can start that educational process and have a local contact, a local pro to be able to reach out to if you indeed have more questions than what we asked today. So I'm excited. Kaleb, go ahead. First question, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Certainly. So I've been in lending for around 5 years now. Before was private lending and just, traditional mortgages, being a broker, kind of like what you're doing now. I'm originally from upstate New York and then spent 7 years in Florida where I was doing real estate and also selling real estate while doing mortgages. And I moved to Colorado last year, and Rural First got into Colorado last year. So we're excited to be here. We're in 19 states and serving folks that want to get some land and stuff out in the middle of nowhere.
We love it. Rural, right? If you think
Yep.
rural, think Kaleb.
Yep.
Okay, we're just going to jump into some questions. Before people jump in, I will watch the chat for additional questions that come through. So this is from a real estate agent's perspective. What are the key differences, do you feel, between land loans and traditional property loans that agents should be aware of when advising clients?
Certainly. That's a great question. I actually get that one often. So a lot of the differences can be, as far as, I'll kind of break it down term wise. Typically land loans are going to be shorter terms just because there's more risk when lenders look at land as opposed to a quarter acre lot with a home on it in a neighborhood. It's very easy for that land, that value of that home that you're lending against, to be stable. So when lenders look at terms, they shorten the term a little bit so they're not putting as much risk on the amount of money that's spread out over time. Some lenders do, 1-year loans. Some lenders do 5-year loans with balloon payments. Some lenders do adjustable rate mortgages. Some lenders do fixed rates. So it all depends on who you work with. For example, we do 15 to 25 years, adjustable or fixed rates. It all kind of depends on your lender's risk tolerance.
Absolutely.
Some other interesting stuff for land loans comparable to traditional loans is typically the interest rate is higher, again, because of that risk involved with it. So your rates are a little bit higher than a traditional mortgage. And more often than not, if you're buying some land in the middle of nowhere, sometimes surveys are required so that the lender knows what they're lending against, and they can have a direct understanding of exactly where the boundaries of the property are, and if it's in a floodplain or not. And if you want to build on the property, there's certain loans for that. If you don't really want to build on it and you want to just, whether you're going to go hiking on it, you want to go camping on it, you want to be, if you're a hunter, you go hunting on it, whatever, there's different loans for that. Yeah, those are kind of a good idea. I mean, the appraisals are set up a little bit differently. Obviously, if there's no structures on it, the appraiser goes out there, walks around, gets comparables, and you go back further on comparables because land transactions aren't as common as, houses in neighborhoods and in the cities, condos and stuff that you guys do.
Yeah. Really good answers. What about this is the most common one that I get personally, but like down payment wise, if you're coming out and trying to purchase land, maybe to build on, maybe not, what sort of down payment? I know there's different options, but what should you be expecting?
So typically some lenders are as high as 30% to get into the land loans on those different types of terms. We'll do as low as 15% down uh, on a 15-year term. 20% down payment gets you a 20-year term, or 15, or even a 10-year term. And then 25% down, you can get up to a 25-year term. And as your term increases, your rate will just bump up just a notch, about 0.125 for every 5 years that you go up. But 15% down is pretty much the standard. And for us, that's not really based on your credit score. It's 15% down for our minimum credit scores, which is 660. So,
Oh, perfect. Not too
yeah.
bad. I mean, that's a
Nope.
pretty average credit score.
Yep.
Let's see here. How can this may or may not be a question for you, but you might be able to speak on this. How can agents help clients assess a potential piece of land for development or purchase, either or?
Yep. So first thing, I'll put my realtor hat on from when I was selling real estate. First things I would look at is what the usage of the land can be, and that would be your zoning. So there's different types of zoning. You got, commercial, industrial focused, ag zoning, open zoning, residential zoning. And those things are going to kind of guide you in what might be an option for your buyer, whether they're trying to do an investment play on development land, or if they're just trying to build their own home out there. Open zoning, you can kind of move in certain different directions, but you always want to look at your local zoning board, because everyone's kind of different across the country. Residential, you can put some houses on there. Ag, you can end up putting houses on there. It's pretty open, but obviously it's just zoned ag because it was either being farmed, or someone had cattle on it, or it was just a bunch of open ground that we call it wasteland. It could just be sagebrush, or just random grass and native grass. And then commercial, that's where you're going to get restricted. You're not really going to be able to build your house on there, and you might be able to put up some ag buildings or some industrial buildings, but your zoning is going to guide you. And then value wise, the best thing to do is work with a good realtor that can give you some comparable land sales over the last couple of years based on the acreage and the type of property. So, as we know, Jamie, like, the closer you get to the mountains, the more expensive it's going to cost per acre, and to build in general. And when you're in the mountains, it costs more to build, and the land's usually worth more, unless it's all a bunch of rock outcroppings and you got a bunch of cliffs and gulches and all that stuff in there. Then that land kind of is sometimes not buildable, so maybe the value's not there. So you got to find sales and kind of understand the topography of the land a little bit. You don't have to be an expert, but you got to just kind of do as best as you can, apples to apples, and then based on your acreage, break it down to a per acre cost or value to something comparable. That'll give you an idea, kind of ballpark, if you're purchasing something for the right value.
Yeah, makes sense. Really good answer. This was a good one, and especially since you've done like regular lending as well. What factors do lenders consider when evaluating a land loan application that may be slightly different from like just a residential loan application?
So that is a great question. So usage of what you're looking to do with that land. So we have a couple different loan programs, and other land lenders, they'll have their own programs too. But you can have a lot loan with us would be an intent to build within 5 years, and all lenders have different restrictions on how long they'll give you till you can build a house on it. Then if you're just wanting to go out there and camp and RV on it and hike and fish or whatever, then there's other loan programs where there's no intent to build and you're just buying it just to acquire the land. You can end up building on it, but it's not locking you into that 5 years where you need to build. So we look at what your usage and purpose of getting this loan from us is going to be before pushing you through to our underwriting, because they're going to make the decision on, all right, so they do plan to build on it. We're going to go comparable to these other 35-acre parcels in the area. But the recreational ag program that we have, there's no intent to build. You can buy as much as you want with it, and go do whatever, really whatever you want with it on it. We don't really care after the loan closes as long as you're making your payments.
Yeah, and it's the right zoning.
Yep, and it's the right zoning. Yes, we do need to look at that. That is important. We will not do it on commercial. There is lenders that'll do it on commercial, and just for everyone's information, commercial loans are usually a little bit more costly than a residential loan.
Yeah.
And, a little bit more processes. They might want to do testing on the soil and stuff, make sure you can actually operate a business out of it if you wanted to, and that it's safe for the environment. Lots of different little things, but
Yeah.
commercial lending is a whole nother world, as you know.
Absolutely. I mean, it's good to know. I think a lot of people kind of lump it all together. And so I think it's just very good information for, if you've done land loans in the past if you're a real estate agent and you've done these transactions, like I'm sure you have questions as well. So if you're watching this, drop questions in the chat, drop questions in the comments, and I'll have Kaleb reach out and answer them as well. Okay, we kind of talked about this one. Zoning issues, like what zoning issues do you run into? So I'm going to skip that one. Oh, this is a good one. Can you provide tips on how agents can market land properties effectively to attract the right buyers?
Certainly. So you can do the basics of the zoning and all that stuff. Basically, you can gather that information from the county, your property portals. A big thing that I see with a lot of the land brokers and ranch brokers and stuff that we work with is proximity to the local cities, typical weather, what the weather's like in that area. Because, obviously weather down here on the Front Range is a lot different than up in, say, Steamboat Springs or up in, Poudre Canyon, and the elevation's a lot higher. And Livermore, you might have some more wind towards Wellington. And when you get into Wyoming, I think really understanding the topography and the weather patterns, the access is really big for us. We have to have access to that property. It can be seasonal, but as long as it shows when the title report's pulled that you have access to that property year round, whether it's by car or snowmobile, that's important, because if things were to go south and you couldn't make your payments, we have to have legal access to get to that property. You may have to go through a neighbor's property and you have an easement to get to your property. You want to make sure you note that in your listing as a realtor. Recreational activities. So if there's a lot of dirt biking trails or hiking trails nearby, that's a good selling point for the realtors. If the hunting unit for these parcels up in the mountains, you want to list the hunting unit. If a lot of the land and ranch brokers we work with, if they're pitching it as a hunting property, they'll put game cams out on their property during the listing and ask the owner if they have any game footage of elk or mule deer or bears or moose or whatever's walking across their land. That's important. And then lastly, probably the most important for down here on the Front Range and honestly anywhere in Colorado, is water rights. Is water rights coming with this land? What's the value of this water rights? How much consumption has the previous landowner been using? Because water, and you probably know this too, Jamie, in Colorado is extremely important. If you don't own the mineral rights or the water rights on your land, technically people can sell that right of using the water coming from the ditches or however it comes in to local farmers and everything. And then mineral rights, like an oil and gas company could technically come in and drill if their lease allows it. So there's a lot of ways to pitch the land, and every land is, most of the part, regionally it's kind of similar, but you really want to understand when people buy this land what they can expect if they were to go out any time of year, and what they can expect with the ability of how they can use the land and be a steward of the land without it being illegal. So
yeah, absolutely. Don't put illegal stuff on your listing. Always a good recommendation.
No.
Kind of a tack on to that question, but what role do utilities and access rights play? You kind of touched on this in valuation and appeal of a land listing.
That is a good question though, because It can cost a whole boatload of money to drill a well once you get towards the mountains. Some people go on cisterns, which is a more affordable option. They'll fill their cisterns with they'll have say a 250 gallon tank, and they put it in the back of their truck and they drive to their local municipality and just pay their small fee to fill that water and drop it in their cistern. Usually 1,000 gallons to 10 or 12,000 gallon cisterns. And then utilities, how far away is your utilities? Do you have to draw utility lines and get the utility companies to give you a quote on what that would cost? That can get super expensive, especially in rural areas. So do you want power there? Are you gonna put up some solar panels and maybe generate some solar panel power? That can get expensive. Sometimes in like a development area where they might have, say, 10 to 30, 35 acre lots, which is a very common size lot in Colorado because it's easier to build and get permitting on 35 acres. Sometimes utility companies can hold up the whole show for you, and they need a commitment from 10 or 6 or 20, however many folks that want to bring power to those lots from the nearest power source. They might need a commitment from all those folks to even come out and give you an idea what it's going to cost. And then that cost is spread across all those landowners. So you really do need to, I have multiple scenarios with that where we're not even really wanting to lend the money to the folks because there's no timeline from the county or these utility companies or the landowners on how fast and how much it would cost to get these utilities in. So you can buy the land and maybe you say, I want to build in 5 years, but all your neighbors have no intent to build and they don't really care about power. That could throw a wrench right in your whole entire purchasing goals. And, I don't want to set someone up for failure. So understanding that and working with a realtor that understands that's super important.
I totally agree. Yeah, I think that's a huge thing that people don't think about. That's normally my first couple questions about land. If anyone ever sends it to me, as I vet it, I go, do you know if it has utilities or not? Do you know what that's going to cost? And I would say 9 times out of 10, people respond back and they say, oh, I didn't even think of that. So I'll ask my agent, but just things to be considering if you're buying, if you're listing, or if you have a client reach out to you as an agent and they want to seek land. Like, these are all really good things to know and be able to ask questions, so that you can vet it on the front end and not run into issues on the back end.
Oh yeah.
Okay, what are typical timelines for closing a land loan, and how can agents help expedite the process for their clients?
Good question. So this depends a couple of different scenarios. Most traditional mortgage closings is 30 days, 25 to 30 days. You have your appraisal timeline that you have to wait on the appraisal and your title to come back. But if we have a full application on raw land and it's under $408,000 loan amount, we're typically able to close those in about 3 weeks. The reason being is these are a low risk loan to us. There's just raw land. You can put 15% down. We use an automated underwriting system, verify your income, assets, and there's not a ton of documents you have to upload. Once you add improvements on the property, and improvements just means, shed, barn, any outbuildings, anything like that, where it's not just raw land, that's going to be a traditional mortgage process. And we're probably going to say 28 to 30 days. But the closings of land loans are typically on just raw land a little bit faster than most traditional, and then on something that has buildings and everything, we typically say 30 days. Construction loans, if they want to build on that land, can take a little longer because you have to get all these bids and specs in, and you have to submit that with your appraisal so you can get the best completion of construction value. Yeah, construction loans typically 35, 40 days. They just have more paperwork, vetting of the contractor and everything. But yeah.
Yes. And also having a client pre-qualified for land loans prior to going out and going under contract normally helps a ton too. I get people sometimes who call and they're like, we're under contract, need a land lender. And I'm like, whoa, okay. Should have done that before you were under contract. How did they even take you? But, so reaching out in advance for sure.
that's the wild west of real estate. You can go show some property, but it comes down to being able, unless you're cash and you got the cash, then go for it. But yeah, you
Absolutely.
definitely would like to get pre-qualified folks with either Jamie or I for any mortgages you do. Get pre-qualified because then you can really see what you got and see what it's going to cost you. And we
Yes.
we
And if you're
offer
not there yet,
that.
we'll
Yeah,
tell you and we'll help you plan.
exactly. Yep.
I would say I don't want to forget this question. It's like slipping out of my brain. Oh yeah. So let's say you do have the cash, right? You aren't necessarily hunky dory because if you have the cash to buy the land, but then you want to finance the build, like you have to be pre-qualified for the build first. So can you actually touch on that a little bit, like how you speak to clients about preparing for the construction to perm process throughout the land loan, or even if they're buying the land cash?
Yeah, so we have this scenario quite often, or they own the land already and have equity in the land. So if they know they want to build, they for sure are set on building, and they maybe they have a couple $100,000 to buy the land. They can go ahead and do that, but they don't want to set themselves up where they buy a certain parcel and the HOA or the landowners association has minimum restrictions on building, and they wanted to build, 1,000 square foot cabin, and the minimum is 1,000 square foot or 1,200 square foot or something. Um, Coming to a lender and a realtor first before doing that, you got to see what this is going to cost you, the timeline to build, because construction loans are they're not cheap. Like you see a lot of people buying an existing structure now and remodeling it and maybe saving a little bit of money, more so now than just going and building even stuff like a barn dominium or shop homes and log cabins. The cost to construct is expensive, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of fees in there, and the builders got to make their money, and you got to have some cash on the sideline in case building costs skyrocket while you're building.
Yep.
Lenders need to see that. We're in the business of lending money, but we're making money from your interest and some fees. We need to see what you're capable of handling safely and not setting you up for where you're running out of cash at the end of it, and the costs go up and the builder makes a mistake or something. These are things that we help coach you through to make sure you're going to be in a good position when that build's done.
Absolutely. And just to tack on to that, stuff like purchasing a car or any sort of new vehicle, whether it's for the property, the ag business, or whatever you're doing, those things can all affect your full process. Even if you're done with the land loan or you bought the land cash and you're planning to build, within 3 to 5 years, like just keep in mind changing interest rates, you doing stuff to your debt to income ratio, a change in income, you know, pulling debt out, all of those things can affect like your long-term bottom line. And so it's super important to like use your lender as almost your best friend throughout the entire process. And
Mm-hmm.
just let them know anything and everything that could happen, and listen to them. Like, don't say, I'm buying a car. Go, hey, how should I plan this so that I don't screw up? Because if you get to the end of that build term, I know there are sometimes consequences and the terms can change. And then additionally, like, yeah, like you said, costs can continue to go up. So you just want to make sure you're not throwing any wrenches in your own process.
Mm-hmm. Very good. That's true.
So with all loans, I mean, if you're buying a residential property or if you're buying land, just make sure your lender knows what's going on.
Yep.
Um, this is a good question. This might be an agent hack question, but how should agents handle land purchases that involve easements or right of way issues? We kind of touched on this.
So that is a good question though. There's a part that I missed. So if you're a realtor or you're an agent and you're looking at helping one of your clients secure land, some of the questions that I would ask of the listing agent, and the listing agent may not know, maybe they ask their seller, is do you have a survey that's been done when you did buy the land? Surveys can cost thousands, couple
And take
thousand
time.
too, and take time. I mean, surveyors, it's a diligent process. They go out, they put stakes in corners of the property, they walk the entire property. They write down certain easements and everything. They explain the property basically on a 1 page, 2 page document, and they can take weeks to get that back. That could be required by the title company sometimes, or it could be required by the lender. And typically when it's required by the title company, the seller would have to pay if they don't have a survey. If it's required by the lender, typically the buyer is going to have to pick up that tab. So that's a really important piece when you're looking at a piece of property. If the seller has it, that's one of the first questions I always ask. If you can ask the seller if they have a survey, that's going to save the buyer a bunch of money. That's going to save time with the transaction to close on time. And it makes the process a lot smoother, and easements as well. So we touched on earlier, but if you don't have any access to this property, it's really hard to lend money on it, because any lender, if they had to foreclose on you, they need legal access to this property. I mean, some people will say, well, I can just fly my helicopter in there. Well, not everybody has a helicopter, so
Right.
you
They don't pay
can't
us
do
enough
that.
to have helicopters,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
exactly. So if you're buying land and you have a helicopter, maybe you could just pay cash and that doesn't really matter. But yeah, easements is super important with land. There's so many different types of roads and dirt roads and Forest Service roads, and you got to cross all your neighbors' properties to get in there. And that's all stuff that needs to be recorded legally with your local municipalities to make sure that you can get on your property without having any angry neighbor disputes, and make sure you're doing everything legally. And the lender and title companies are going to need to see that stuff.
I love that. This question I feel like you've already answered, so it's kind of more of a confirmation. But what are the most common reasons for land loan rejections, and how can agents prepare their clients to avoid these pitfalls? So, like utilities, access, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I would say the most common one is the easements and access piece. A listing agent may not have full confirmation or have a survey in hand, and their seller says, "Well, I think I have one," and then you go under contract. And I always preface the buyer, "Hey, they're looking at finding the survey. They don't have it in hand, so you need to prepare yourself. There could be thousands of dollars that you'd have to pay if you really want to close on this property."
Yeah,
That's probably one of the most common. Um, Randomly, sometimes there's some soil issues. We don't require a bunch of soil tests and everything, but sometimes there's random rare minerals, or I'm trying to remember what the one of them was that caused some type of it was somewhere up in the mountains, kind of near Georgetown area, where there was a lot of mining and stuff back in the day. But there was a mineral, and I can't remember. It was like carbonite or something. I'm not a scientist, but and the seller wasn't comfortable with that being on the property because it emitted certain whatever chemicals or something in the air, or if they were to dig, and they weren't comfortable with that. And that's something that you have to consider when you're buying land. You don't know, it's not only what's right there in the land, it's what's underneath. And if you're going to be digging or building something, you might be going into this certain unknown underneath the surface of the ground. And sometimes there's stuff that you don't really want to be around. Dang, it slipped my mind. It's some crazy material that probably nobody knows, but it
that's
halted
okay.
a buyer wanted to back out from it. So knowing
That's
what's
that's
underneath.
insane. I've seen sometimes where the seller doesn't want to let go of their mineral rights,
Yep.
and I know that can cause some issues. But it's really specifics, and then yeah, just access is tremendously important.
Yep.
This is maybe more of an agent hat one, but how do you recommend agents effectively collaborate with land planners or architects, general contractors during the land loan process, to enhance the value proposition for potential buyers, or even the land purchase process?
Yeah. So I see this not a ton, but sometimes you'll see land or listing agents having a builder come out, and maybe they pay for it out of pocket just to give them a ballpark of where there's some build sites on a certain parcel, whether it's good views or it's just they wouldn't have to do as much excavation to create a foundation for the house, and what kind of square footage footprint they'd be able to put on these certain build sites. That's a good way to help increase value. Working with civil engineers, if it's a real rocky area and whatnot, maybe you have somebody come out and just say, "Hey, this is this type of rock. You're probably gonna drill, have to drill a whole ton to get through this, and excavation costs are going to be super expensive. That's a good way to get an idea. Um, if you have somebody that wants to grow certain crops on land, then you want to have somebody come out that's an expert in soil testing and just making sure that this type of crop might yield good, yield well for you. Um, those type of things. I always suggest if you have a lot that's and you're a realtor and you have a lot that has a good site to build, you want to maybe have a general contractor. At least I always prefer to work with people consistently rather than giving my buyer, a whole bunch of options, because you don't want to confuse them. If a couple people work really well, you want to recommend them to go through and get some bids first. And they can give you a ballpark of, how much it would cost to build. They'll never give you the exact square footage because it changes basically like mortgage rates almost daily, the cost of materials, so and labor. But having those people in your pocket and understanding what you can do with that land is a huge selling point. It's not just a piece of dirt. It's very limited, like
Absolutely.
mineral rights. You're just saying that maybe they don't want to give up their mineral rights because they want oil to be drilled and they can make money from that for their family. Very
Exactly.
common. Very common.
Yeah, especially for people who know what they're doing. And if you are not used to land loans and stuff, or just land purchases, good things to look for on the buyer's agent side as well. These are some lender questions. You've done a really good job of like covering a majority of it. So like I have some questions that I feel like we've already answered. Um, oh, I guess like so for lenders who don't do land, like what's a great way for lenders who do not have a land loan process to connect with you and collaborate with you?
Certainly. So I always am about passing business around and doing the best and serving the clients, to give them and offer them the best deal. Um, for us, really, it's just reach out to me, call or text or email and say, hey, I have a client potentially looking at land. Can you tell me some information about how you work? And I'll usually give them an overview on the phone and then send them, like what I've done with you, and send them a snapshot and email. I say you can, whatever your client prefer, however they prefer to communicate, put them in an email chain with me or a text chain, or give them my phone number if they're comfortable with it. Just give me their phone number and I'll call them and make the introduction and explain it to them. But yeah, it's like we only do stuff really outside the city limits, and this is all we do. So if you're a lender that's doing residential stuff or commercial stuff, or maybe you're a special lender in condos or manufactured homes, you want to put your clients in the best position. At the end of the day, that's your responsibility when you hold your mortgage license, is to do the ethical thing, and to make sure you're serving your clients. I mean, I always say put yourself in the client's shoes, and if it was your mother or your grandfather or your sister that was buying a loan or buying land or buying a house, wouldn't you want to offer them the best deals you can and work with the
Right.
best people? Because you and I both know you only buy maybe a few houses, the average person, a few houses in their entire lifetime. And by the time they buy a house 25 years later, everything's changed, and it's not always the most pleasant process, because we're asking for your information, your confidential information, and you want to make that process smooth, and you want to feel good about who you're working with good
Absolutely.
professionals. You definitely
Yeah.
want to do it.
I tell other lenders, I think there's a lot of lenders who, don't have land loans, and so they're afraid to refer off for those things. And maybe real estate agents feel this way as well. Like if you aren't as familiar with land loans, or land, you possibly try to take your clients to residential properties instead, or new builds, or, something so that you can help them still. But at the end of the day, like Kaleb knows partners that would probably give a referral fee if you don't want to deal with the land loan purchase. And then
Yep.
as far as the lending goes, like you most likely as a lender have a permanent product. So, if they get the construction loan done and the land loan done, there's a possibility you still are able to close your client at the end. But
Mhm.
if you're not, right, being able to give your client that option of saying, okay, like I'm happy to help cross qualify you and see what you qualify for in a regular purchase. educate you on what those terms would look like. But at the same time, you said you have land loan questions. So let's also talk to Kaleb, get cross qualified, and see what works out best for you. Just be prepared for whatever that perfect property that is that pops up. And I can tell you as a lender, your client will thank you for that, will thank you for giving that extra option. Because if it works out, great. They're going to be so happy that you connected with them with an expert, and that they were able to accomplish what they set out to do, with the right education and the right terms. But if they decide it's not the best option, that contact, like Kaleb's going to stay in contact and say, hey, I don't think they're going to end up going with a land loan. Let me know if you hear back from them. So, I just think those relationships are truly important to be able to continue to get you referral business as a real estate agent, and just make sure you have good transactions, like happy customers at the end of the day.
Yep. It's the saying, what's that saying that says, bad news spreads much faster than good news typically.
Absolutely.
And in this, with us having everything out on the World Wide Web and and word of mouth and being, Northern Colorado is not a big area, and you want to make sure you're doing right by your clients. You don't want to have them writing bad reviews for you, them finding out after they close that they could have had a better option or save some money here or there. You always want to do right by your clients because it's the right thing to do, and also because we work our butts off to build our businesses, and the last thing we want to do is jeopardize that because someone wants to write a bad review and we made a silly mistake and a silly decision on trying to hold on to the loan. Or as a realtor, you try to guide them in a certain direction. You never want to try to do that,
Right.
because you never would want that to happen to yourself. So definitely, that's a good point.
Yeah, or you say, well, I don't know, let's look at a couple houses first. So let's not talk about land until we've seen a couple houses. And then they go home and they go on Google and they go land loans. And they just find whoever pops up at the top of the sponsored, and they talk to that person, and that person says, oh, that's so awesome, but I also work with a real estate agent in your area, and I would love if you would chat with them. You could totally just lose your client because you didn't have that referral partner. And that just would stink for you. So yeah, partner with people that are great will help you to keep that deal.
That's so true. That's a good point. Yeah, you definitely can lose your clients pretty quick by not just having the team around you. The best real estate agents and lenders have their teams. That's just how it is. You don't do it alone, and do right by your clients, and it'll always serve you well.
That actually makes me think of a good question that's kind of like, current to times. But how have you been seeing the NAR settlement possibly affecting land transactions in the future based on how things were originally? Does that even affect land loan transactions?
Good question. Land is unique, and I'll speak to the land side first, and then also I'll touch on kind of like just ranch brokering in general. So the NAR settlement on land hasn't affected much because the most of the folks that's all they do. They're pretty comfortable with the negotiations and making the deal happen. It hasn't really affected land much. I think it affects more in populated areas where there's a lot more business to be had and there's a lot more people to do business with. So people might be, trying to get more commission, or they're not providing enough value to earn their commission. That's why you want to work with someone that's gonna be worth what's being paid. Something kind of that I've seen, I work with a lot of ranch brokers that sell couple $1 million ranches to I don't do the loans on the $80 million ranches, but I've learned a lot from these guys, and they've done it the old school way since day one of it's all negotiable on your commission. But these guys are professionals and they're doing all the due diligence and they're working their tails off to get their customer the best deal, to understand what their customer's buying. When you're buying an $80 million ranch, those customers are going to be very sophisticated, and they're going to have the cash on the sidelines. Some people call it dry powder. If you mess up, they could come at you with legal actions. You're the one that's the professional with the license at risk. So you want to make sure you're putting your commission values at the right amount for what you're delivering, and always looking to add tools and value and options for these clients to understand why you're charging what you're charging. The commercial business, they've always kind of been negotiating their commissions since as long as I've heard. So this isn't affecting the commercial as much as it might affect residential. But I haven't seen much. I haven't seen much change in that. Uh, at the end of the day, it comes down to providing the value that you are earning in your commission, and if you want to be the cheapest and find the cheapest realtor to work with, don't expect to have the best service. That's why they can charge cheaper, because they can say, well, I'm not paying for staging. You probably see this often. I'm not
Yeah,
paying for staging for this property. It's just, I'm only charging 1.5% commission. Maybe someone who charges 2.5% commission will pay for your appraisal, or maybe they'll pay for staging to help your property sell faster. So
absolutely.
understanding those things is important. That's why you want to work with somebody that knows what they're doing and pay them a little bit more, because this is what they do and this is how they feed their families. So you got to have a little bit of a perspective and some empathy and understanding for where your commission's being paid and what it's being paid for.
Absolutely. What about on the buy side? Like, how do you recommend that buyer's agents approach that, I guess, that conversation with, land?
I would say, depending on two things. So I would say, if they have zero land experience and never done a land transaction, my first suggestion always to a buyer's agent is, one, do you have somebody in your brokerage that has done land transactions and is experienced? Because, like we talked before, if you mess up that transaction and you have an unhappy buyer experience, that's a bad reflection on you. If you take a little bit of a pay cut and split your commission with the experienced broker in your office that has done land transaction, I would always highly suggest that at least the first time, maybe a few times. Um, Maybe the first few times, you're going to learn more in the first transaction than you think you would ever learned on a land transaction. The other part of that is, if you somehow come across and you're not a ranch broker or selling farms or big plots of land, highly suggest working with people that are specialized in that. If you go out on a property and you can't tell your potential buyer what this type of building was used for, what crops are growing on here, or the water rights or the conservation easements, or the limitations of the land use, and who has rights to get on your property, and the buyer buys that property, oof, and they're spending a whole bunch of money, you could have simply solved that and referred to your expert. I highly recommend that. I mean, you kind of see it sometimes when a residential broker or a real estate agent might take commercial listings. How do you market it? How do you explain to a buyer what they can use this for their business? Partner with somebody who
Absolutely.
knows. Take a little side seat in the passenger seat. Take a little bit off your commission. You're also gonna be less stressed. So if you
Yeah.
want to sleep well at night, work with somebody in your brokerage that knows what they're doing with this stuff. They'd be happy to help you.
I think that's all really good advice. Do you feel like there's anything kind of high level overview that we didn't touch on today? I kind of feel like we did a great job of covering the majority of the FAQs.
Um, I would say, number one, if you're gonna be financing anything, residential, commercial, land, talk to somebody that's a lender first. Talk to Jamie for the residential stuff. If you got some land stuff, contact me. Um, that's super important. You're gonna be able to see what's really makes sense, and they'll give you options. If you don't want to purchase what you might be able to buy $3 million worth of land, but maybe you only want to have a payment that's a $700,000 loan. Maybe that's what you want to do. Because we all know buying and selling real estate is an emotional thing. So just make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into. So you're not over leveraging yourself, but talk to lenders first. And then, normally the good lenders, like, I can like to consider myself that I'm pretty decent, and I know you're really good at what you do. You're going
Thank
to
you.
have plenty of good realtors to recommend to. Just like any industry, there's good and bad, and you want to make sure you're working with someone that's referred from your lender, that they've maybe done business with in the past, or that they know is a specialist in whatever you're trying to purchase. So go to your lender first, get your pre-qualification, get an idea of what you're buying, and then they'll help you out with finding that person to bring that transaction together.
Absolutely agree. And if you're a real estate agent out there watching this, and you don't have a land lender that you like, know, and trust, definitely reach out to Kaleb. I text him all the time and ask him questions and say, call this customer, and he's friggin' all over it. So
Yep.
I'd highly recommend reach out, have him in your back pocket, because when that buyer comes, whether it's a $50,000 land transaction or a $3 million land transaction, like, you want to be able to, with a snap of a finger, reach out to your contact and see if it's something viable. You now know that, some of the top questions you need to be asking yourself and the listing agent, or, the listing, if you're trying to acquire a listing, are access, right? Utilities / mineral rights / water rights, and is it buildable, right? I would say those are the top 3 things always to consider. And then if you don't want to remember that, find Kaleb. He'll find you a realtor to refer off to, or find Kaleb so that you can learn about it. If you're really committed to trying to be someone who is in, even the rural or ag or even just land purchase world in general, having those resources, having a local pro is how you get that start. So I just highly recommend starting those conversations.
Definitely.
I love it. Well, so if you haven't seen this in the past and you're just wrapping up with us today, this has been Ask a Noco Pro. This week we were talking about land loans. Next week we're going to be talking about how real estate agents can leverage other types of contractors and local pros to expand their business and solve problems. At the end of the day, this series is all about how to help more people. So if you're interested in helping more people, join us next week. We do this every Monday at noon. And I will always be posting the recordings on our YouTube as well. So if you miss one or you liked one and you can't remember something we said, always feel free to check that out and rewatch one of our recordings.
Thank you for your time, Jamie. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kaleb. We'll drop your contact info in the description. So you guys look in the description for Kaleb's contact, shoot him a text, shoot him a question, and let him help you close some deals.
Definitely. Sounds good.
I love it. Well, have a great rest of your week, Kaleb. We'll chat soon.
Thanks. You too. See you later.
Bye.